Welcome, golf fans, pursuers of knowledge of the almighty dollar. This is your golf guru bringing you the 2023 Sentry Tournament of Champions. First and foremost, Happy New Year. It has been a while. It feels like forever since I've been with you guys, talk some golf, but it is that time again to get our brains back in the golf world and for me, off the football world. But anyways, I'm going to be kind of doing the same format for this show as I was for pretty much the fall swing, where I'm going to give you a preview of the course, all the information that you need to make some sensible bets and also to do your picks. So I'm going to go over my favorite bets. I'll also go through all the information from a DFS side, from a pick side. And with that said, thanks again for joining me, and give me about 30 to 45 minutes. We'll get through all this information quickly and hopefully give you guys an edge on your bets and picks for DFS coming up. All right, with that said, let's talk a little golf. So real quick, for even myself, I had to kind of go back and do a quick refresher and just kind of looking at the last few tournaments that transpired, some that were actually FedEx and some that were not. But of course, Adam Svensson won the RSM Classic. Feels like, again, forever ago, but he learned how to putt. And if you remember back, if you've been with me for a while, right in the start of the 2022 season, I talked quite a bit about Adam Svensson. He lost his card and then came back, and I told you guys, hey, this is a guy to watch. He's probably one of the better ball strikers. I put him, he's a notch, of course, below like the Russ Henley, the Morikawa, the Victor Hovland. But what he's always lacked is kind of the short game and the putter. And amazing enough, the putter turned on at the RSM on Seaside, and he went nuts and won his first tournament. And of course, he's also in this field. And then also Victor Hovland, who I had on my cover, who I'm pretty high on for this tournament, even though his past results here have not been the greatest. But overall, the guy just wins everywhere but the lower 48 in these kind of events. If his putter works like what it did at the Hero, of course, he won back-to-back Tigers tournament. So I just wanted to mention that. But yeah, excited about seeing what Victor can do at this tournament. And then the last one I'll pull up is the QB shootout, which was probably the most recent. I did not watch any of this, or like the PNC with the father-son kind of thing. But funny enough, Tom Hoge and Sahith Theegala won, and that's why I bring it up, because both these guys are in the field. You got Tom Hoge, of course, who won. I'm gonna forget now. What was it? Pebble Beach? It wasn't Pebble Beach. It doesn't matter. But also Sahith Theegala, who won or had a chance to win multiple times, and we'll talk about how you get in this tournament. But I just wanted to bring that up, that together as a group, they won the QB, which I think there was, maybe 15, 20 other teams. So I just wanted to bring that to your attention if you did not see that. All right, so let's kind of focus on the Sentry Tournament of Champions. Of course, we are kicking off the Hawaiian Swing, which kind of kicks off the year. I mean, some people say the real PGA tournament doesn't start till the Farmers. I kind of disagree. I'm not saying that this event is the real kickoff. I almost feel like Sony, it's kind of your full field event. But, this is still a good event. You got some of the best players in the world. And let's talk a little bit about it. So the location, of course, is in Maui, Hawaii. They are going to be playing at the Kapalua Resort, which the course is specifically Plantation, and has hosted this event since 2013, but there was kind of a major renovation in 2019. So I'll talk a little bit about that and some of the things that I'm looking at. And what really was changed was quite a few, I think about 5, if I remember, about 5 different greens were quite significantly changed. So it did affect the way the course played. It's a Bill Core, then Ben Crenshaw actually did the renovation in 2019. It's the only par 73 that the PGA players play, off the top of my head, that I can remember. And it's a very long track at almost 7,600 yards, but there is quite a bit of elevation, which kind of really turns that down. It's also very unique on the par 3, par 4, and par 5s, how that kind of mix. Off the top of my head, and we'll go over this on the scorecard, but you've got only 3 par 3s, and then you got 11 par 4s and 4 par 5s, which you would think, even off the top of my head, I was like, oh, there's 5 par 5s here. It's not. It's just a ton of par 4s. And then you've got Bermuda everything. You've got Bermuda fairways. You've got Bermuda rough. Now, the reason why I put, I had from last year 2.5 inches of rough, but on the latest superintendent sheet that I received, there was no mention of length of rough. So I don't know that if it's cut down even more, but if you watch a lot of golf, the tricky Bermuda, if the rough is higher and around the greens, is where it can typically cause, depending on which way the Bermuda is running, can cause some issues. And if you're not used to playing out of the rough in Bermuda, especially around the greens, it can it will show up. Guys that play a lot in Florida typically, know how to get around the Bermuda, and the guys that are better on the West Coast, if I just think off the top of my head, like a Max Homa, it does kind of show. And then last but not least, if you care, of course, the greens are Bermuda. They're a tip eagle. Now, funny enough, I always feel like when you're on these coastal courses, it's a little different Bermuda, almost like a Poana. It just feels like it's a little more thicker. But like I said, I'm just telling you the grain that is actually on these greens. All right, so we talked a little bit about the player field. It is a 39-man player field. And how that comes about is, of course, the past champions or winners of the season before. They get an automatic bid, and then they also take some of the guys that ended up like top 30. So if you didn't win a tournament, but you still ended up top 30 in the FedEx Cup, you also got invited to this tournament. And as you probably already know, the number one, who of course won last year, and also was number one in the world, still is Rory McIlroy, who decided to not play in this event. It is a new elevated event, and they have the ability. There's 4 elevated events now, and this is one of them, and they have the ability to pull out of this, and he did. This is the one I guess he's going to skip, which is kind of crazy. I mean, for me, and probably all of us that's listening, if you can get to Hawaii, but maybe he just decided he wasn't going to play in the Sony, so he wasn't going to make a trip just for this. But I mean, you're guaranteed money here. It is a no-cut event, and pretty much if you hit a tee shot, you're going to get some kind of money and also have a really nice little holiday in Maui, as the weather there is always 78 and sunny. This is the winter season there, so of course they do get a little more rain, but literally it's always, if you've been to Maui or Kauai or whatever, you can drive to one side of the island and it'll be perfect, and maybe you go up in the mountains and you're going to get some rain. All right, I mentioned no-cut event, and so they're going to get 4 days of golf, and of course we got the if you're on the East Coast like I am, we're talking about 5 hours time difference. And so if I do the math in my head, the golf is going to be quite a bit later. So we're going to be getting, I'd call it, I guess, prime time golf, where, we're used to watching this thing kick off at 8 a.m. Eastern. Instead, we're going to, it's going to be quite a bit later. And as far as I saw, PGA Live is back on ESPN. Now, I did not look if PGA Live will be covering this event. I would guess they are. At least what they were doing for the fall swing was covering it Thursday, Friday. And then once the networks picked it up, at least the PGA channel, you got to watch some there. All right, so some past history here real quick. Of course, if you watched it last year, you had Cam Smith just go in Fuego here. I actually had him as a pick, and of course, as you guys know, big Cam Smith slappy was the one thing that hurt when he went to Live Golf. But yeah, he shot 34 under, and then you had John Rahm, who I believe almost caught him. I think he ended up like 33 or 32 under. You had, if I remember right, Matt Jones, and we'll look at more of this in detail, who also had that crazy 61 kind of out of nowhere, and also ran up the board. Before that, you had Eris English win at 25 under with a playoff with Joaquin Niemann, who, of course, was also on the Live Tour. And then you had Justin Thomas, who this was right after the renovation, shot 14 under, but crazy windy conditions, and we'll talk a little more about that. That was a 3-man playoff. And then you had Xander the previous year, who shot 23 under. These are the largest greens that these guys play on tour, almost at 9,000 square feet. Average green size is around 5,500 square feet. If you're curious, they're pretty flat. There's not a whole lot to them. But because the greens are so large, of course, you could hit the green, but maybe have a 60-footer, So 3-putt avoidance is something that typically I will look at, but we'll talk about why I'm not actually going to put it in my custom stat model this time. You got a bunch of sand, 93 sand bunkers. You've got no water hazards that technically come in play. And what the superintendent's sheet was saying, that the greens are running at an 11, which is, slow comparative to what typically PGA greens are. But again, because we are a coastal course, the winds can kick up, and they got to keep the greens a little slower, because if the ball starts rolling due to the wind, then they have to actually postpone the tournament until, the winds calm down. So that's why they keep the greens typically 10.5, 11. And I already talked about this. The only defense this course has is wind. That's really it. I mean, this is a birdie fest. It is a shootout. I think it's kind of funny because John Rahm, like I mentioned, almost had the chance to win this thing last year, but then also kind of came out and made statements where he cannot stand these, kind of putting contest, birdie fest, that he wants a more kind of a tougher challenge. But it is what it is. And so when we look at the comparable courses, we're going to talk quite about a bit that have kind of changed up what I'm looking at from comparable courses. And if I didn't mention, also the fairways are just crazy wide here. So pretty much you should have no issues about hitting fairways. It really all comes down to who's going to be the best on the approach from like 100 to 150. Hence, we'll look at Justin Thomas on how well he's done here. And the guys who get a hot putter. And that's really it. I mean, all these guys are going to hit the ball 300 plus because a lot of these shots are going to be going downhill. I've actually got something on that, a little video that I've got. Last, if I remember correctly, it was kind of a wet condition. So wherever you hit it, it was going to stay. And I did see in the superintendent notes that it was a very dry year for them. So everything was running very firm and fast. But they just recently, during the Christmas time frame, got about 4 inches of rain. So, will it be back? It definitely won't be ball in hand. And I don't remember it was ball in hand last year. That could have been part of it, why they would have tore this course up even more. But you give these guys ball in hand on this course, it's going to be, nothing. But again, I haven't checked the weather. As far as I know, everything is going to be fine. But side note, there was some rain there just recently. I did note that Aussies tend to do well here. Maybe it's a bit because of the wind. You got to go very low. There's eagles out there. There's some, very gettable par fives. At one time, I really said, I was looking at distance, and I'm still looking at distance because you can kind of remove the issue and hence against back to Cam Smith. The one thing that he could always have trouble with is he could hit the ball far with a driver, 320, but he could get wayward. And that's, whenever I've seen Cam kind of struggle, it was the driver just kind of going wherever it wanted. But that was removed here. So you give certain guys with the knowledge and their whole brain that they're on the tee, that they don't have to worry about where the ball so much is going. They can just let it go. Guys like Cam Smith, in my own opinion, could really kind of feast, and it kind of just takes that barrier away. The one maybe hiccup in their game is removed. I mentioned elevation changes. We're going to see that really quick, but the long story short is you never really have a flat lie. You're always either swinging down on the ball, up on the ball's, below, so it hits fades, hooks. So that's a little bit, I guess, of the course defense. And I think that's about it. I think that's everything that you need to know from a course on what, and I've always stated, not a bad idea if you've never seen this tournament to go on YouTube and watch some of the past highlights. All right, so here's that quick elevation, just real quick so you can kind of see the difference. I thought I'd put this on for you guys.
Champions. Located on the northwest side of the island of Maui, the highest point is on the 17th tee at 500 feet above sea level. In comparison, the lowest point sits at 75 feet above sea level on the second green, a difference of 425 feet. The drastic change in elevation creates the opportunity for heroic shots on the drivable moderate length par 4s and reachable long par 5s.
Okay, so all that is showing you, like they were showing what, number 17 to number 2, that about a difference of 425 feet. That is the craziness of going up the mountains and then working your way back down. And you can see a little bit of that in these couple pictures. As I mentioned, teeing off and kind of working your way down. But you can see the huge fairways, huge greens. Actually would be, I think, a fun course if somehow you're ever there in Maui and you have the ability. I would highly recommend playing it. I would love to. I haven't been there in a little while, but anyway, side note, that's enough about the course. And again, you can always go watch the YouTube if you want a little more, but not a whole lot to it. The other thing I'll note again, I meant the easiest greens to hit on tour. This is it. Plantation course. And then, of course, you got at Shriners, TPC Summerlin. You got the RSM at Seaside. You got the Sony Open at Wailea. And then the Wyndham at Sedgefield. And that's going to come into a little bit of what I'm going to be doing from a comparable course. And we'll talk more about that, but I just want to let you know, again, some of the easiest greens to hit. But on a side note, you also got to be a pretty good putter hitting Cam Smith because, if you're not sticking it within 10 feet every time, you could have some very long putts. Nothing too crazy about the scorecard. And I already kind of mentioned you got 3 par 3s, you got 11 par 4s, 4 par 5s, and as usual, you've got 6 birdie opportunities, 6 bogey opportunities. No advantage, and I don't think, because it's such a short field, that the guys are going to be teeing off 1 and 10. They're not going to be doing split tees, so you don't have to worry about, hey, do I, for showdown, do I pick guys that are on the back? Nope, none of that worry, and there's no advantage to it anyways. You can see it's not the gentlest handshake. The couple of toughest holes is 1 and 2, and then the hardest hole is 17, a very long par 4. Easiest hole would be number 5, so like a 4% chance of an eagle. So it's the highest on the course. Short par 5. That's about all that I call out. I got the latest and greatest official scorecard and everything there matched. And we have a good, nice sample of data. But Nothing crazy. The only difference is just, again, it's a par 73, a ton of par fours. So guys that typically do well in par fours, but I looked at that last year and the year before, and I don't think there's anything to that. I've kind of slimmed my custom stat model down, and we'll talk about that. So here we go. Custom stat model. How do you win at this track? It all comes down to irons and putting. Of course, driving distance, I think there is an advantage because, again, having 100 yards in is always a little typically easier than having 175 in. Ball striking does show up here, and then I just really focus on those two proximities to pins, 100 to 125 and 125 to 150, and then you need to make a ton of birdies and eagles, and that's really it. I mean, my previous models, I've always told you guys as I keep doing this, I focus them more and more and kind of, the way I look at it is the more stroke gain areas that you have to look at, it's going to kind of water down the main important ones, and I've learned that over time, so really now I've learned to kind of keep it honed to 7, 8 really key stroke gain categories when doing the data stuff. All right, so that's let's look at some past winners. I already mentioned these guys, but you can kind of take a look at, so of course, Harris English prior, and I'll pull up last year too, but 2021, and again, it's pretty simple. I'll just pull that up. Approach, Harris did a lot more with putter than he did with the irons, but he's still gained in all the areas. Around the green here, I don't think it's significant. The way I look at it is, if you need to be doing a lot of chipping on this course, you're not going to be in contention anyways. You got to be hitting greens, making putts. Like I said, you're going to have to go low. Now, do I think it'll be 34 under again? I doubt it. But could it get upper, 27, 28 under, something like that? Definitely. Again, if the wind stays down, which I have not went and looked at yet, maybe I will take a look at that and I'll throw this in the video, just take a quick look just to see what they're saying. But yeah, I mean, over and over, the resounding is the irons and the putter is what's going to have to happen. Now, you can always do it a little different. I mean, you see JT, he gained almost 6 strokes with the irons and only gained about a stroke with the putter, but that means that he was probably hitting his irons, as typically he's very good from that 100, 125, probably hitting it within 4 or 5 feet. And, if you make it, you don't gain as much with the putter, but if you miss, it can take away. So it's kind of odd how that stat works. If you're hitting it 20 feet, and you're making quite a few 15, 20 footers, your putting stats go up. So, it's kind of that back and forth game. And then before that, there's Xander and Gary, who I believe that was the playoff I mentioned. And you're going to see JT shows up quite a bit over and over. So, third, first, third. So it's done very well at this tournament. And then if we plug this in, for last year, you see again, Cam Smith, gained 3 strokes about with approach, but gained almost 7 strokes with the putter, so that's where he made. But even off the tee, he gained a ton. You can see guys that gain off the tee, which again is more here, is all about distance. That kind of just shows up over and over. And also what I thought was interesting, I mentioned that Australians have done well here, and maybe this is just a quirk, but you had Cam Smith, of course, an Aussie that won it. You had Matt Jones coming third, an Aussie. You had Cam Davis coming 10th with Mark Leishman, both Aussies. So again, it could have been a little bit of a quirk, but it makes sense, if it is a windy track, that these guys from Australia typically can play in that. Okay, so now looking at some of these custom stat models that I do for you guys. Of course, I always start out with recent form. What does that mean? We are looking at the last 6 tournaments or 24 rounds that these guys have played. Now, they're all going to be a little unique, right? Because some guys played the fall swing. Some guys maybe kind of ended it after the CJ Cup. The Zozo was probably their last tournament. So we're going to get a little mixed bag when we call it recent form. But a lot of these guys on here we have seen pretty recent. Of course, Tony Finau out of all these guys has been ridiculous. I actually have some more things I'll pull up on Tony so you can see what he's done since the summer. But of course, he's won 3 out of his past 7 tournaments played. Now, funny enough, I'm using a bit of narratives on how I'm going to do my DFS. And you can either agree or disagree, but, there's certain things that I've seen. And I kind of believe that, with Tony Finau, whenever he goes to a resorty area, now I don't know if his kids are in tow or not, or family, but we saw this at Mayakoba where he missed the cut. It is a pure narrative. It is not using data and what we have here. But funny enough, if you are going off just the data, everything says that Tony Finau should be a smash spot. I mean, he should do very well. So, it is what it is. Will Z, I'm actually, from a DFS perspective, very interested in. Everything that we know about Will Z, he should do well here. Now, again, the putter has always been his Achilles heel, but where he's done some damage with the putter has been on Bermuda greens. So we'll look a little bit at that. Tom Kim, I'm going to talk a little bit more about, but Very interesting because where he's got his 2 wins are also courses that you have to go very low. Tom Hoagie, an Iron Master, is just the putter that can let him down. You got Patrick Cantlay and Xander, who I think, are very similar, just solid all the way through. I always think of Patrick Cantlay when you get him on bent greens. I'm a little more excited. Trey Mullinax, right? Elite off the tee, had his first win at the, and again, I always mess these up, the Barbasol, I believe it was. Yeah, Sunjay M, who on Bermuda typically does putt well, also has a good track record here. Colin has been resurging, right? He had a bit of a fall off there with his irons. The putter has been back and forth. Hideki, we're not really sure, still he's had some withdrawals, still dealing with some issues there. You got John Rahm, of course, who did very well over in Europe, won the Spanish Open, and has been playing very good golf. He's your number 1 now that Rory pulled out. You got Scotty Scheffler, who's been struggling a little bit with the putter. Corey Connors, whose game is, I think he had I'm trying to remember the last tournament he played in. I don't know if it was RSM or what it was, but he struggled and then had a crazy Sunday. But Corey has not been playing the game that Corey typically plays. And what I mean by that is typically a lead off the tee as a, 280 in the fairway, and then, awesome, crazy, ridiculous irons, a little similar to a Victor Hovland or even a bit of like a Colin Morikawa. I look at him that way, just an elite ball striker, but the putter has always struggled, but where he's got his 1 win, of course, at TPC San Antonio for the Valero was Bermuda. Yeah, Brian Harmon here, nothing really much to say with him. And then Cameron Young, my kind of FOMO bet always, fear of missing out. And again, here could be a really good spot. I just don't know if Cameron can go that low because his putter, I think, again, is not elite, but he's got the distance, can get very hot with the irons. And we have seen, at least on POA, the putter go pretty hot. And then I mentioned this is just Tony Finau stats, and if you look since we'll call it pretty much end of May, start of the summer, just ridiculous. The Charles Schwab, the RBC, is second or fourth. Of course, he won the 3M Open, the Rocket Mortgage. Both of those are bent greens, but he did win the Houston Open where he gained almost 8 strokes on Bermuda. That was at Cadence Bank. Now there's that Worldwide Tech. We don't have the stats for that. I seriously blame that. I think he was looking for a little bit of a vacation with his family. But, again, that is total speculation and a little bit of a narrative. The FedEx St. Jude, again, gained 4 strokes. So what am I going with all this? If you look what happened with Tony, always been a great ball striker, but then finally the putter flipped. And it flipped for a while. I mean, we're talking, 5 months here. So it's not a fluke. We'll see. If he does anything like this, he could definitely be top 5 or win this thing, no problem. All right, so we look at the guys who've done well at Kapalua over the past. Now, I didn't pull up crazy. I went the last 3 tournaments again because remember that renovation I mentioned. I kind of wanted to keep it post-renovation, see what these guys have done. Now, again, some of these that are pulled in here is going to be before that because all these guys have played here at different times. You're going to have guys who have only played here once before because, of course, you got to typically be, won a tournament the year before or, again, top 30 in the FedEx. But JT just owns this place. Patrick Cantlay has always had good showings. Same with Rahm. Morikawa, I think it's like, a couple top 5s and a 7th, something like that. Xander, I'm interested in Russ Henley. You guys know I'm kind of a Russ Henley guy. Of course, he just had the win at Mayakoba. Has also done very well in Hawaii. We'll look a little more at that. Spieth. Spieth kind of makes sense, right? If he gets that putting magic going. Harmon, Matsuyama, Adam Scott. There's the Aussie. Who also, just side note, played in the Australia Open and had a chance to win. I think he shot 9 under, and Adrian Meronk actually won it. I believe he ended up 12 or 14 under, something like that. But at one time, I think if I remember correctly, Adam Scott was winning or leading going into Sunday for the Australian Open. Again, not the greatest field, but I just wanted to throw that out there if you did not know it. Of course, Scotty Scheffler, I mentioned, elite. The putter, though, it just makes me a little nervous. Seamus Power, I don't know if he can go that low. I like him in more of a, I don't want to say difficult settings, but where it's more of like a 14, 15 under and maybe a little weaker field. I don't know what he can do against these guys. Scott Stallings, for whatever reason, just very interesting to me. He's got the length. I've seen him get really hot on Bermuda. And then you got Keegan Bradley, who, of course, he won, the Zozo over in Japan. And the putter has turned around for him. So, again, I think of Keegan where I want a guy that needs to be very elite ball striking and has to keep it at play and hope the putter turns. Again, not that his game can't resonate here. We'll look at what he'd done history-wise when I go through the picks. But, yeah, not someone I'm super, super focused on, I guess, best way to put it. And then I pulled this up. This is JT's kind of record here at the Tournament of Champions, just so you could get a longer look since 2016. I mean, he's got 2 wins here, 2 thirds, a 22nd and 21st. Remember that this field on average is somewhere between 35 and 40 guys. But of course, the irons are elite. And again, I'm speculating because we actually, funny enough, I don't have the percentages approximating the pins. I'm just doing math and what I know typically these guys hit, especially on this track where you've got a lot of, hitting the ball down, which you're going to, what I mean by that is the elevation is dropping. So you're going to gain yards that way. And I just feel like a lot of their shots are coming in between 100, 125, 125 to 150, as I mentioned. And that is where JT lives and breathes and just, makes magic. You can see it hasn't been so much with the putter. It's been all with the irons. And then if you're curious who's been putting very well on Bermuda, at least over the past 9 tournaments or 36 rounds, funny enough, Sam Burns still up there, number 1 on Bermuda. Of course, Bermuda Burns. The problem with Sammy is that what we've seen over the past, I don't know, it feels like 4 or 5 tournaments, if not longer, that his ball striking is just not where it was. The driver's been wayward. The irons have been a bit off. The putter's still been there. But yeah, it's not been the Sam Burns we're used to. Funny enough, Mackenzie Hughes, we're going to talk about him a little more on my betting side. But kind of shows up here, of course, from a putting perspective. No shocker. Seb Straka, who won the Honda. Aaron Wise putter has been coming. I'm kind of interested in from a betting perspective. You got Seamus Power. Billy Ho usually does show up, but has struggled at this event. I think even since, I think he did well his first time out, like 2014, but since then it's been a struggle. Max Homa, I'm a huge fan. You guys know that. But I like Max in more of a kind of a battle, more of a tougher course. I don't see Max going 30 under or high 20s. I just don't know if that's in his game or not. It could happen. The guy's been an elite ball striker, been doing great, but I put Fitzpatrick same place. If I see some weather, if it was windy and weather, I might look at him. Again, Will Z from a DFS perspective, we have not seen this guy, well, since he won the St. Jude and also had a really good show at the PGA. Then he withdrew. I don't know if it was the Wyndham. I think he had to withdraw. Of course, the back, he's been rehabbing for like 4 months. So we have no idea. I mean, he could come out and maybe he just wants to get a little bit of a paycheck. I would highly doubt that. I would guess that he is 100% ready to go. And everything he does is, I think, spot on for this place. It's just, did he work on the putting? Is he feeling good about the putter? Of course, Sun JM all around, great game, and typically does do well on Bermuda, so I'm interested in him. Harmon, not that he can't do well, just not exactly the guy that I'm looking at. I would almost rather go to a Scott Stallings from a betting and a DFS perspective, just because I know a lead off the tee and can get hot with the putter. Adam Scott been playing pretty good golf. The putter has been showing up the last few tournaments. Tom Kim, we're going to talk a little more about. I'm very interested in him, and then Tom Hoagie, the putter, of course, with Tom Hoagie. A lot of these guys, you're going to hear that. If the putter turns, watch out. If you're curious on who's just smoking the ball off the tee and getting that advantage, on those par 5s, also shortening those par 4s. Of course, Cameron Young, I already mentioned, it's just, can he get the putter going on Bermuda? Trey Mullinax, I think, is interesting from a DFS play down there. Luke List, no thank you. I can't do it. The putter is just so bad. Hey, maybe we'll look at when he gets back on POA. Of course, he won the Farmers last year, early in the year. So, maybe something to think about then. Will Z, I've already talked quite a bit about. Ryan Brim, right? He won, is it the Puerto Rico? It's one of those that, it was his last tournament to play, had no expectations, went out and won that tournament. Crazy windy conditions. So it was a coastal course. If you want to take a crazy bet, but the guy has been trash since then. So, who knows, but 750 to 1. JT, we already talked quite a bit about. Rom, Burns, Scheffler, Bradley, Wise. These are all guys that bang it off the tee. And then, of course, Victor Hovland that I'm very interested in. We'll see how that works out. Now, this is probably the list that I'd be most interested in. The problem is, again, some of these guys have not played in a while, but this is best on approach. These are the guys that are elite with irons, and I think that's the number one thing you need if I could take anything at this course, because really the driver, I think, is, yes, it's great if you can hit it further, but because it's not tight, you don't have to be accurate, and all these guys can hit it 300 average, maybe a little more. It's the guys with the irons, and then if the putter flips, they just have that hot run with the putter, then watch out. And of course, I mentioned Will Z already. We'll dive into him so you can look a little about, what was going on with him before he had to go through the rehab. Morikawa, I told you, has kind of come back a bit, where he was having some issues with the irons. He was, drawing the ball, not fading it. Also, the putter has been back and forth. You got the Hoagie, Henley, very interested in. Hovland, Harmon, again, keeps popping up, funny enough. You got Homa, Matz, getting injuries. We don't know where he's at, but he's had a great career on Kapalua. You got Jordan Spieth, who I feel like his game just kind of regressed. He had the RBC Heritage win where I feel like he backdoored into that. I think guys gave it away. I haven't seen Jordan Spieth play that well. Now, of course, you had the match, which I did not describe or discuss, which I don't think there's much to talk about. But long story short, JT and Jordan Spieth tore apart. Really, it was mostly JT. Played amazing golf in the dark there. I believe it was in Vegas, if I remember correctly. And against Rory and Tiger, it was really kind of over before it began, which no shocker. I mean, it was pretty much all on Rory. So you got those two guys right there. Corey Connors, we talked a bit about, just I don't think his game is where I want it now. That guy, a bit like a Victor Hovland, where he can go out and just blitz creek. Like I said, the last tournament he played on, he kind of was just blah. And then on Sunday, just, tore it up. You got Scheffler, Finau, Tom Kim, and Xander, again, best on approach over the last 24 rounds of golf or 6 tournaments. All right, so whenever we get in these scoring fests, I always do this for you. I call this as kind of my showdown model. What do I use when I do showdown? I kind of just look at these key areas. So, of course, birdies, I got 50%, eagles at 15, bogey avoidance, because, of course, they take points away for bogeys. And then birdie or better gain, I threw that in there. And if you want to know over the last 6 tournaments they played, now you got to remember that because Patrick Cantlay, again, maybe I think played in the CJ Cup or the Zozo, but that's about all we've seen him since the FedEx Cup, is leading over the last 6 tournaments he's played. Of course, Finau, we already talked quite a bit about. Will Z was up there, Tom Kim, Seamus Power, funny enough. Got Rahm, Xander, Homa, Thigala, M, Hoagie, Young, Wise, Molinex, and Hovland. Guys that have been scoring very well, but you got to remember, some of these guys have been playing more fall golf than the others. Oh, and then I was curious. I wanted to look at the same thing for Bermuda greens. So this is looking at the last 6 tournaments or 24 rounds that they played on Bermuda greens. And funny enough, Will Z came up number 1. Of course, I mentioned his win at the FedEx St. Jude, which I believe was the first FedEx event this year. Cam Young, which I was kind of shocked. I don't think of Cameron Young on Bermuda, but you can see. So again, I don't like the odds that you're getting with Cam Young. I think it's even down on DraftKings to 18-1. So that's a little difficult to make that bet. Cam Young is still not won. Again, I don't know if he can go that low, but we've seen, of course, at the Genesis where he came out, him and Neiman just on fire. You got Wise, Bradley, Thomas, Homa, Power, Xander, Burns, Kim, Matsuyama, Finau, Hovland, Hoagie, and then JJ Spawn, who won this past year at the Valero, which is Bermuda Greens. And again, this is all focused on who's been scoring well when they're on Bermuda Greens over the past 6 tournaments. All right, so I just kind of pulled this up because I mentioned it is a birdie fest. And if you want to know the courses that had the most birdies since 2010, for Shriners, TPC Summerlin, you got the Wyndham at Sedgefield. You've got the John Deere at TPC Deer Run. You got the Travelers at River Highlands, and then you got Wailea where they play the Sony. That is where a lot of birdies happen. Now, why I bring that up is because I looked at the comp courses that I had up last year, and I was more focused on Bermuda greens and the length of a course. So you were getting Wells Fargo, if I remember right. You were getting, like the Houston Open, Sanderson Farms, Arnold Palmer, like all those kind of courses, which are really tough tracks. So I was like, you know what, that doesn't make sense. I'm going to take a total different spin on this, and I'm just going to go with the courses that, typically guys shoot 18 to 26 under on. Where are the courses that get lit up from these guys? And so the top ones for that, of course, I already mentioned is, Wailea at the Sony. You got Summerlin for the Shriners, Sedgefield for Wyndham, TPC Craig Ranch, right? I mean, I think they occasionally shot 26 under. John Deere typically gives up 20 under. And then the Waste Management, and of course, Tournament of Sentry Champions. So where I'm going with this is, of course, this is not a comparable course from how the course typically plays. It's more of just what do the guys shoot there, and that's the tack that I'm taking. So you do what you want, but funny enough, which I was shocked at this, Justin Thomas comes up number 1. Now, of course, it's pulling in probably quite a bit the Tournament of Champions. I know it's pulling in Waste Management. I'm not sure if it was also maybe he played I don't know if he played Craig Ranch for the AT&T Byron Nelson, but funny enough, it makes a little bit of sense that he comes up. Russ Henley, Cantlay, Tom Kim. I mentioned Tom Kim, his 2 wins was at the Shriners and the Wyndham. So we know the guy can go low, and I believe, the Wyndham where he came out and had that quadruple bogey on the first hole and then still won the tournament? Pretty sure that was the Wyndham. You got Hideki, Morikawa, Xander, Stallings, Burns, Rahm, Will Z, M, Spieth, Hovland, Hoagie. I like that list, and I like this better than what I was doing last year with the comparable courses because, again, it's not that we're trying to figure out who can navigate this certain kind of course, I think that makes sense. We're trying to figure out who can go the lowest, and we take a sample of the courses that where the PGA plays that happens at, and who gets spit out. And that's again when I'm looking at, again, you could totally disagree with this, but I kind of like it. So that's a bit of where I'm leaning. All right, so with all that said, I'm going to talk about who I'm betting, my betting card right now. And I got in just today, so I got in a little later. What's Tuesday? I feel like it's still Monday, but it is Tuesday. But I like Tom Kim. I feel like I got him at like 20-1, not 25-1. Russ Henley, I did get, I think, at 45-1, so a little better there. Aaron Wise, occasionally, purely because it's not that he's won back-to-back at TPC Craig Ranch, but both times he's had to go super low in pretty decent fields. So we know he can do it. Now, that is bent greens, but whatever. And it could just be that course, but that course also is very similar to how this course plays, as in you literally at TPC Craig Ranch, you just tee it up as high as you can and hit it as hard as you can. You don't have to worry about, the fairways are huge there. The greens, of course, are not as large, but they're pretty decent. It's a very easy course. So that he can do it there, why not? 80-1. Viktor Hovland, I mean, if I had to pick my number one, my favorite to win this tournament, I'm going to put Viktor Hovland in, even though he does not have the history here. But everything else where he's done all his damage and wins have been, again, the Puerto Rico Open, the Mayakoba, the Hero, like all those kind of tournaments. It makes sense that he should do well here, but we'll see. Sahith Theegala, very rare. I don't typically bet him or even really play him on DFS, but when I started to dive into where his Sahith has done very well, this is where he typically should do well, right? Sanderson Farms, Waste Management. He also had a recent, I think the RSM, he came second, I believe, which I don't think in my mind is a great fit, but that's, it is what it is. And the one thing that makes me nervous about Sahith is his driver. It can start to go wayward, but I don't have to worry about there. He's got the distance, and the guy can putt, and typically does putt well in Bermuda. I'm going to throw Adam Svensson in there. Again, this is a real long shot, but if he can keep that form that he's had, just an elite ball striker, but the putter, if he's found something. And then Matt Hughes, I'm playing it. Again, these are all long shots. Because, again, whenever I look at Mackenzie Hughes, I always think of a cheaper, lighter Cam Smith, who, again, we don't have to worry about the driver so much with Mackenzie Hughes. If the irons can do what he did. And all these guys have had wins, pretty recent, not all of them, but we look at Russ Henley won Mayakoba. Mackenzie Hughes won, Sanderson Farms. Svensson won RSM. Theegala hasn't won yet, but, he won the QBE with Hoagie. You got Viktor Hovland just coming off the Hero win. Occasionally we've been back, that's a while ago. Aaron Wise, we're still waiting. Russ Henley just won Mayakoba, and then, of course, I mentioned the 2 wins that Tom Kim had this past summer. So that's a bit of it, too. I'm looking at guys that have been, in good form, confident. Okay, so with that said, let's go jump over into Fantasy National. Let's do some quick analysis from a DFS pick side, and then we'll get you out of here and wrap this thing up. Okay, so I've hopped over into Fantasy National, and as always, my plug for them is if you are doing any betting on golf or, of course, fantasy DFS, I highly recommend this tool. I know a lot of you guys and gals have tried it out, and hopefully you found it successful. And again, if you ever have any questions on how to use it, let me know. I've created some quick videos for some people to kind of show them how to do this, or what I do with the modeling side. But anyways, what are we looking at here? Of course, this is what I call kind of the sneak peek right here, the dashboard, and it's really nice. It kind of shows you everything in one quick look of hey, the 5 stroke gain categories that I'm mostly focused on. How many birdies have they been making over the last 24 rounds? And then, of course, we can look at the last 5 tournaments, recent results, and then if I click here, we get tournament history. I am not using any filters on the left here, but you can filter this thing down. You can do what I, do the comparable courses. I've already done, as always, a little pre-work. And out of these almost, 39 guys, I've got 15 that I'm interested in from my kind of core player pool from a DFS perspective. And we'll talk real quick through that. Of course, Rory's still in here, but we already know Rory is not playing, so we don't have to worry about him. And this, I'm going to kind of go through this from a pricing standpoint. So, from top down and where I'm interested in. So this is going to be kind of quick. We'll move through this and go focus on some of the guys I'm a little more interested in. But right off the bat, we can remove Rory. And so now your next or most expensive guy is you got Scotty Scheffler and Jon Rahm in the 10s. Now, if I had to pick a guy in the 10s, I would go with Jon Rahm. Again, Scotty Scheffler, I just, until I see the putter doing a little more. You can also see over right now, I got the tournament history up, but let's take a look at what they've done. So, Scotty's been playing well. The CJ Cup wasn't very good, but everything else pretty solid. No issues there. And then John Rahm, I guess you can make the argument if you look at the last 5 tournaments between the two, maybe Scotty Scheffler has a little better pedigree there. But if we look at tournament history, which I don't really hold a ton for this event, again, it's a bit of a slap and tickle, I call it, a boondoggle, whatever you want to say. But, he's got the better pedigree from a tournament history. But again, Scotty's only played it once. But if I had to make the decision, I would go with Rahm. Just again, what he's been doing over in Europe, I feel like his game is, kind of taking that next step back to where it should have been. Felt like he had kind of a, not the greatest 2022 season. So that would be mine, but I'm actually not going with anybody up there. And even JT, funny enough, now, I guess, like I said, if I had to make a pick, and I'm sure, depending on how many lineups I build, will I put a Justin Thomas in? Yeah. So if I had to pick out of those, well, we'll say 3, because Rory's not in, I would probably go JT over those guys. He's below the 10,000 threshold. But funny enough, where I'm going to start a lot of my builds is going to be with Cantlay and Xander. Even though we have not seen Cantlay, so I guess he played in a Shriners? So yeah, that's a while ago. But again, a couple fourths, a 13th and a 15th. Now again, I do kind of prefer Cantlay when he's going to be on bent greens. Just seems like that's where the putter goes in Fuego. But everything I've been seeing out of Patrick has been playing great. And then of course, Xander, has been playing amazing golf too. And actually won this back in 2019, as I mentioned. I believe shot, a 62 on that Sunday to win the thing. But he had a 12th, a 5th, a 2nd. I mean, the guy's done great here. So if you had to, put a gun in my head and say, well, if you had to pick between the two, I would probably start with Xander over Patrick Cantlay. So that's kind of how the top of the card. A lot of people are interested in Morikawa. I'm just not there yet. Again, I mean, you can see the results are not been the greatest. Now, his history here has been great. The Worldwide Tech, he had a 15th. Again, that's out of 30 guys. For 9,400, I'm going to kind of wait and see. I would rather play at Tony. I told you, there's been incredible. Now, you can look at his past results here, but of course, Tony wasn't putting like he is now. But everything says, but my narrative with Tony, why I'm going to pass, is I just have a feeling that maybe his head's been off the game for quite a bit, that if his family's in tow, I always get nervous. Now, there is no cut here, right? I mean, he's not going to, get cut after Friday, but I just don't know. I think, you also see projected ownership is really high. So I'm actually, funny enough, I'm going to go to Will Z. And again, now remember, this is a GPP DFS perspective. I'm not telling you for cash games and all that, but you got to find some difference. You got to get unique. And like I said, I think from the top, I like these two guys. And then when I get down the 8s, I'm going to play some Will Z. And again, you can see, he tried to play at the BMW. Did not play in the Tour Championship. He had to, I think if I remember right, he did try to tee it up at the BMW, and then had to withdraw, which that's what it does state. If we go look at Will Z real quick, this is what I wanted to pull up, and I'm just going to do this for a few of the guys. You can kind of see what he was up to. Of course, he won that, gained 2.5 with the FedEx St. Jude. Of course, that's at TPC Southwind. That's Bermuda. And then Southern Hills, I believe that's Bermuda. Let me just click. I want to verify. I don't want to give you false. Yeah. So where he had that chance, I believe, lost to JT at the end there in the playoff. That was also Bermuda greens where he gained 4.6. So where I'm going with where he's had some of his bright spots in the most recent have been on some Bermuda greens. The Wyndham, didn't do that hot, especially for him. I think I expected a lot more. I think I actually bet him at the Wyndham and it did not work out. But anyways, what was it? The AT&T Byron Nelson. Well, he stunk it up with a putter. You also got Cam Young. I'm interested in from a betting perspective, but I don't think I'm going to put him in DFS. I'm actually very interested in Mr. Tom Kim, and I'm not interested why he's not. I thought he played at the RSM, but maybe he did not. Saying here the last time he played was the CJ Cup. But neither here or there. Where he's had his 2 wins, I already kind of mentioned, of course, was the Wyndham and Shriners. And let's go click on that real fast. Also, just a really good putter. I like the way he putts. It's it's funny enough, it's all shown is that he gains on Bermuda. If I just click the putter, so he on Bermuda at the Wyndham, he gained 12.5 strokes. And then at the Shriners, gained 6 strokes. So it's his best 2 outings, of course, his 2 wins, but both on Bermuda greens. He doesn't have the crazy length. He's 280 off the tee, but man, the guy with his irons and what he does, he's an amazing player. And so I will be rostering some Tom Kim. I already told you I'm betting him. Max, like I said, no issues. Just I love, huge fan. I don't see that this is the tournament for him. Now it could happen. I mean, I've seen that guy go on an eagle run. I mean, he's had some stints where he went nuts. Great ball striker. That putter goes. I just, I always say I like him on the West Coast if possible, or on POA. Pretty high on Victor. Now I told you his results here have not been great. I mean, a T30 and a T31 out of a very, small field. So he's, it has not shown up here, but where the guy, of course, has done all his winning has been in these kind of events. So I mentioned Mayakoba, OHL, which is exactly the same. So back-to-back wins there. It's not going to come up here, but the Hero, he's won twice, the Puerto Rico. And like I said, we look at where he's done. See what the putter. So that would be bent greens. Where's the CJ Cup? That was bent. So yeah, not that it's showing up. Bermuda is his strongest. You can see that it's actually showing up not, but I don't know. Like I said, it all makes sense to me. Sammy Burns, I'm a huge fan of. I might sprinkle him because I just don't think he's going to be highly owned. He's just been, as I mentioned, if you've been watching golf and seeing what's been going on, you see right here, the approach of the ball striking over the last, 6 tournaments he's played has been pretty weak. The putting's still there. Still hitting it, with distance wise, but I've also noticed the accuracy has been a bit off. So I'd probably go to Sungjae Im, which that hurts. I would always rather play a Sam Burns over a Sungjae Im, and maybe in Showdown I'll sprinkle in Burns, see what happens. But I told you he's had a T5 and a T8 here, and when he's on Bermuda, typically he does well. Now, the one thing that I know, whenever I play Sungjae Im in DFS, he burns me every time. I don't know what it is, but him and I just have not had the greatest relationship from a DFS perspective. So hopefully that turns around. Jordan, no thank you. I'm out on Hideki. I got to see, again, I think from a betting perspective, I think he's like 30 or 40 to 1. So, man, I mean, this guy has had a great track record here. I mentioned right here a T3, a Tier 2, a T4. Recently, not the greatest. But, if you find a good 40, 50 to 1 on him, might not be a bad bet. But I'll probably stick away. I got to see something from him. I've been a little nervous. Brian Harman, just not my cup of tea. It could come back to haunt me. I mean, you see recent form, good show at the Worldwide Tech, RSM, has pretty good, decent form here. I mean, there's no reason from a perspective, I guess, why he could not do well here. I just don't think of Brian Harman, who can go super low. That's just my thoughts. Billy Ho, big fan. You guys know that too, but you can see not the greatest results here, and has not been playing that good at golf. But I mean, typically on Bermuda, I do kind of like Billy Ho, but I'm gonna pass there. Corey Connors might be a showdown play for me, but not a 4-day GPP. I'm gonna take a pass there, and I'm gonna fall to Russ Henley. I also have Adam Scott, so I'm gonna sprinkle some Adam Scott. I'm not totally, but you can see been playing good golf. Good showing during the FedEx Cup. I think he was kind of the game changer if you were playing him in some of those FedEx Cup events in the GPP. Russ Henley, I'm kind of hoping the ownership's low on. Now, Russ, you can see, missed the cut at the Houston Open, but won the Worldwide Tech. And what I know about Russ is just his game should fit very well here. You can see, over his history, if he's going to game with a putter, and that's where he's kind of struggled lately, it is going to be on Bermuda. And so a lot of that was pulled in before, but you can see, he won the Sony Open that's at Wailea, totally different course. No, it's more of a shot maker plotter course, but it is Hawaii, coastal, also the Honda was on, of course, Bermuda. And then, of course, that recent win is what's got me a little excited. So I will play some Russ from a GPP perspective. Adam Scott. There's no real reason. I mean, I mentioned Keegan. If you look at his putter, let's go take a look here. We can't see the Zozo, but he won it. So we know he had a game with the putter. So he's gained in the last 3 events. And, it's been a while since we've seen him, since the CJ Cup, but there's no reason. I think I'd rather go to Aaron Wise. I think they're very similar players. Pretty elite ball strikers, just the putter shows up or not. And I think when I looked at Aaron Wise, his Bermuda putter looked pretty good to me. So he gained 5 strokes at the Houston Open. That's Bermuda. Worldwide Tech, I'm pretty sure that's either Poana or Bermuda. Same thing as far as I'm concerned. The CJ Cup, was that Bend? No, it was Bermuda at Congaree. That's right, the Palmetto. I totally forgot that's where they played the CJ Cup. But he's had, the putter has been getting pretty hot. Now, funny enough, the one thing that he's typically usually very, very good with is the irons. But he actually has lost almost 5 strokes at the Shriners, lost 4 strokes at the Houston Open. So that's a little concerning, but you can kind of see it's been back and forth. But if the putter is working and he gets the irons going, I think Aaron Wise could be a great play. Also, I'm hoping the ownership's kind of lower. I mentioned Seth Theegala. Typically, pretty rare that you guys hear me tout him on here. Now, it's got all the talent in the world. What was he? Come out of what? Vanderbilt? Where was it at now? I'm forgetting where he was just crazy from a college perspective. But I like his game for this course, so that could be, a little sneaky or, almost a little against typically what I do. But the guy does typically putt pretty well on Bermuda and not too bad with the irons. It's, again, what's always made me nervous when you get him on a tighter track. And also where he's had success has been on quite a few Bermuda tracks. And also I mentioned that RSM where he gained 6.5 again on Bermuda greens. The irons weren't that great. But the Travelers, so a lot of the courses that I mentioned that typically where you need to do well is where he's done. Of course, the first time that he kind of came on the radar for me was Sanderson Farms, also Valspar, again, both Bermuda tracks. So long story short, I'm going to play some Sahith. Also, I bet him. Seamus, I just don't feel like I can go low enough. Funny enough, I didn't mention this. I think I did throw a quick last minute, or not last minute, but I threw a few bucks on Seb Straka. Total kind of off the cuff. You can see he missed cuts recently. But this guy, he just either he's feast or famine. Either he's up there going to win it or he's going to miss the cut. And so maybe that time, he's got the distance and he has putted well on Bermuda in the past since the Honda. Occasionally, I already told you my theory on this is purely all baked in. He's played here, at a T30. So nothing past. It would be just, again, can he do what he does at TPC Craig Ranch and can go super low? Mackenzie Hughes, same thing, kind of on the Cam Smith. Again, I'm not saying he is as good as Cam Smith, but there's a lot of similarities. Great short game, great putter. The driver typically can go wayward. So let's go look at his. See if I'm on with this. So his about 300, but the driving accuracy can be a problem. You see here, it's the ball striking. But if the irons flip like they did at Sanderson Farms, now that's, he's kind of been on and off. But we know what we're going to get with the putter. And again, that's the Houston Open. I mean, if he could have done anything with the irons, could have won that thing. If you gain almost 9 strokes. So it's a long shot, but I will sprinkle some in from a DFS perspective. I already bet him. I believe it was 80 to 1, 100 to 1. Tom Hoagie, elite iron. Elite ball striker, just needs the putter. You can see recently, not the greatest. He's never played here before, so he's going to be a newbie. Same with Svensson. We're going to ride that hot. Hopefully he keeps that putter that he did at RSM. No thank you, Ches Reavy. JJ Spawn. He's a guy that I like to play. Again, when it's a little bit more tougher track, I need him to hit fairways and greens and hope the putter goes. And then I think a flyer would be Trey Mullinax. Now you can see it's been pretty ugly, kind of like T4 at the Houston Open and then just disaster. But he's got the length. Of course, his win, what was I saying? Was it the Barbasol? Yeah, the Barbasol, the alternate event. But Valero, he's shown up to Houston, so both Bermuda tracks, Sanderson Farms, Bermuda, the FedEx St. Jude. So where he has had some success putting has been on Bermuda greens, even though it doesn't show that overall, but we just look at, what is showing here. Let's do it this way. So yeah, the most he's ever gained with a putter, again, that's a while ago, but would be at the AT&T TPC San Antonio, where they play the Valero. Of course, Shriners, we already talked about quite a bit. Sanderson Farms, the Quicken Loans, that would be I'm just curious, Avondale. That's funny. That's where they played that Wells Fargo this past year. The TPC Potomac. Always mess that up. All right. Anyways, just give you some ideas of guys that I'm going to be playing. So that's it. So at the lowest would be a Trey Mullinax I might throw in there. But I gave you quite a few guys in the 6s that I'm interested in. So you got Mackenzie Hughes, Tom Hoagie, Svensson, and Mullinax. So if you're building top heavy, that's the way to go. With the lower guys I like. Occasionally, too, just throw them right in there. I told you I bet Sub Straka. So if I'm betting them, maybe I'll throw them in a team. But I do like Sahith, Wise, Russ Henley. I'm going to have a lot of bills with again. That could totally blow up in my face. But I'm looking for iron guys. Hovland, Tommy Kim. I'm going to throw some Will Z. And again, remember, this is all from a GPP perspective. Like I said, I will throw a JT in there, maybe swap out, maybe a JT Xander, and then kind of build in with the rest of these guys. And then Will Z is going to be like, you know, as I've said, the Joker, right? We have the Joker card. We have no idea what we're going to get. It's been a long time since we've seen him. But if he's playing, the guy's got the crazy distance, crazy irons, and if that putter goes, man, watch out. And at one time you could get him at like 35 to 1. I feel like some people started betting that up pretty heavy, and I think he's like 25 to 1 now, so I didn't jump on that. All right, and then I looked at Wind Finder real quick for you, pulling up this Maui Kanata Park, and the only reason why I'm pulling it up is purely, looks like they might get a splash, a little bit of rain, nothing to even talk about tomorrow, but the weather looks great, you know, high upper 70s, and light winds. I don't see anything crazy, so it looks like they could tear this place up. So just a side note, keep an eye on that though. Of course, if you're playing Showdown, I've said this 1,000 times, you're going to want to keep an eye on that weather. And it is coastal, so at any time the wind could blow. But right now, it looks very favorable. All right, with that said, that is going to be my Tournament of Sentry Champions. Thank you so much for tuning back in. I hope you're excited to bet on some golf. Like I said, as you guys know, I was heavily into the football thing, but that's kind of coming to an end, especially with like week 18, which, you know, I don't know, it's a little tougher to kind of figure out that. So I'm going to probably, my focus will be on the golf, and from a betting perspective and a DFS perspective, I'll do, of course, a little football, but nothing near what I was doing. And I kind of mentioned for this next fall that I might be adding in a fall show purely for football, which I've had some of the guys, you guys said that would be interesting. I just got to figure out the format I want to do it in. There's so many people out there that cover football, and I don't want to be just another. So if it's not something I think that's a little different, then there's no reason to do it. But anyways, hey, excited. Happy New Year to us. Let's start out with a solid 2023. Oh, and then from a one and done perspective, you know, typically I got in the Pat Mayo, but for whatever reason, I don't know if you guys have had this issue. Let me know if you have. It's not allowing. I think there was something said that they had to pay a certain amount of money to certain states to allow to do this one and done, and they decided not to do that. So I will not be doing one and done. Now, of course, when I get into my picks, you know, if I'm picking these guys, of course, I think they're going to do well. So, you know, you can always use any of my picks from the one and done perspective. But if you have a specific question, if you are in a one and done, just ask me on Twitter or on YouTube, and I'll respond to who I like. But I don't look like I'll be doing a one and done this year, because that's really the only one I ever did was getting into the Pat Mayo challenge. But if you are new to the show, do me the honor, click the like button, share this, subscribe. People, I got to keep seeing the subscriber base grow at least a little bit to keep me doing this. And follow me on Twitter at DFS Golf Guru, where during the season, I keep an eye on everything to make sure that you have all the information that I have on withdrawals or anything I see from pressers, whatever it is, to give you any kind of inside edge on your DFS or betting perspective. All right, guys, good luck to us in this new year. I'm excited for some golf, and I'll talk to you guys next week when we do the Sony. All right, take care.